What is up, my fellow gamers? In today's video, we got our weapon tier list for Monster Hunter. Now, like and subscribe for more amazing gaming content. We're gonna go over the 6 different starting weapons. Now, it is said that they're going to release additional weapons over time. But once those weapons do come out, I'll go ahead, we'll do updated tier lists, so on and so forth, reviews of the new weapons. Real quick, just to mention that, as always, tier lists are opinionated. I don't think there is even a tier list out there that is factual, so very important to keep that in mind. This is my tier list. What I put in here isn't going to be something that you may or may not agree with. All right, this is for entertainment. Don't come in the comment section and get all butthurt, because people love to do that with tier lists. I don't know what it is, but tier lists tend to trigger people so much, and I don't understand why. I really don't. It's just like it's a game, it's a video. Like, come on, guys, chill out. All right, so we got first one we're gonna go over is the sword and shield. Now, I'm kind of trying to base this on play style of how easy this weapon is to use, as well as for solo play as well. That's kind of what my tier list is based off of, like solo play if you don't have friends to team up with, and also like how easy it is to kind of use these weapons. Sword and shield is by far, I would say, one of the easiest weapons to use. You kind of start off with it. It's very agile. You can move around the map very, very quickly with it. The attack animations are also extremely quick. You can pump out like 5-6 attacks very, very fast before the monster even goes ahead and does the red glow to trigger their attack. So you can hit fast, you can move around. Other thing is though, although we don't have a charged up attack for sword and shield, you do have the ability to actually use the shield to kind of block some of the damage that the monster goes ahead and does to you. So for sword and shield, I am putting this in the S. I think it's one of the easiest weapons for anyone to use. For the special skill, you have perfect rush combo, which just lets you do a whole bunch of chained attack combos, and even will go ahead and have your character jump and launch into the air and kind of jump on top of the monsters sometimes. Next one we have is the great sword. Now this one is kind of it's not like amazing, but it's also not horrible as well. It's kind of like a slower version of the sword and shield. You don't have a shield, but it hits a little bit harder. But the attack animations are a bit slower than sword and shield. So you have to be a little bit more skillful when it comes to using. You can't just kind of spam your attacks out randomly. You do have to kind of take it slightly slower and make sure you dodge those incoming attacks from the monster. Now, the great swords do have a charged attack. It's fairly easy to charge up. It really doesn't take too long. The mobility is decent. It's not as good as the sword and shield, but you can still maneuver and dodge monster attacks. So I'm going to put the great sword in the A category. Moving along, our next weapon is the long sword. Now, I really like the long sword because it has a lot of uniqueness to it. This is one that I feel is as good as the sword and shield, but it does take a little bit more skill. The long sword also has really good mobility. You can kind of get around fairly quickly from dodging. What I really like about the long sword, and I think this is like the best part about it, is you have a charged up attack. Now it takes a little bit to charge it up. It's gonna be a little bit of skillful timing on when you do this, but you can actually use your charged up slash attack with the long sword to completely avoid the monster's attack and use it offensively as well as defensively as like a maneuver to avoid taking damage. But I really like that charge attack. You kind of dash through the monster, slashing him, but also avoiding his attack. For the special skill, we have Spirit Helm Breaker. Leaps skywards, plunges into foes with a deadly secret technique. Just does a whole bunch of damage. For the long sword, I'm gonna put this in the A. I think the long sword would go in the S, but you have to be a little bit skillful, right? Next up we have is the hammer. Now this one, I think the skill ceiling is kind of high for this one. I feel like you have to be really, really skillful to use the hammer correctly. The hammer has one of the more slower attack animations, so you kind of have to be a little bit careful about how you go and spam your attacks. It's not like super duper slow, but you have to be careful because the attack animations themselves are kind of relatively long with your character picking up the hammer and swinging it. It's just like a longer animation. So because of that, the enemy has an easier chance to kind of attack you if you spam them too quickly and you're just like tapping on the screen, then you can easily get attacked. The hammers do hit very hard, I will say that, and they do have a really strong charged up attack. Charging it up all the way, you can almost instantly break a monster's weak point. But again, the timing has to be perfect. Special skill for the hammer, I think, is absolutely amazing. You go ahead and you just start spinning in a circle with the hammer and you hit the monster, I think like 4 or 5 times, and you just do insane amounts of damage. Although I say that the hammer can be very strong, I think that it's just really hard to use, especially for new players, and it's something that you really have to get the timing down extremely well with it. So for that, I'm putting it in the B. I know a lot of people will probably say, oh, the hammer's great, and I understand. I'm not saying that the hammer is like awful. I'm just saying that you have to be a lot more skillful to use the hammer. Next up we have is our 2 ranged weapons. We have the light bow gun. Now this weapon is really interesting because depending on which type of light bow gun you use, you're gonna have different ammo. So you have like the regular one that doesn't have any elements on it, and it does normal ammo shots and then pierce ammo shots. And then you have elementals. So for the water one, it does water ammo and then slicing water ammo. The attack range is really good for this, so you can kind of stand far back and shoot the monsters. Extremely easy to dodge their attacks if you don't want to blow through potions, because 90% of the time you're not going to take any attacks from that monster at all, because you're just at such a great distance that you can see their attacks coming and you can easily dodge them. For the special skill, we have Wyvern Blast Counter. It just does a super charged up one shot that does a huge amount of damage to the monster. So all around, it's a great weapon to use. However, there is a huge downside to this, and that is the fact that you have to reload. And once you reload, there's really no way to get out of the reload animation. Now, there is some gear pieces that you can go ahead and use that will reduce the reload time, which I highly suggest. Try and make some best build videos for each different weapon and show you like which gear pieces you should kind of pair up with each weapon. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. Aside from that, I think it's an amazing weapon to use. I'm putting it in an S. And the last weapon we have is our other ranged weapon, and that is the bow. This is another one that I think is really strong, but also takes a bit more skill, because for the bow, you can't really just spam your single target attacks because you just don't do enough damage. To get the most out of the bow, you really have to do charged up shots. And depending on how long you charge it up for, each one will have different increments. So depending on which bow you have, if you're using like a regular one, you'll have like a charged shot and it'll be rapid level 1, rapid, and then the last one says pierce. So you can charge the bow up to 4 times, get maximum value for it, but that's a lot of time that you're kind of sitting there charging it up. If you're not a more skillful player, the monster will easily go ahead and hit you with an attack and you won't be able to dodge it. But the biggest problem I faced with using the bow is the fact that I just can never put out enough damage, and I always tended to run out of time. Trying to go ahead and constantly use those charged up shots was tough because you have to be careful of when the monsters attack. For that instance, I'm putting the bow in the B because I think it is one of the more harder weapons to use. But that is it. That is our tier list right there. We got our S's, the sword and shield, the light bow gun. We got our A's, the great sword, the long sword, and for our B's, the hammer and the bow. Stay happy, stay safe, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.